and Ray Flowers Monday through Friday, powered by fantasyguru.com. Use the promo code FSD20 for a 20% discount on all the products at fantasyguru.com.
We welcome you into the Thursday edition, also known as episode 4 in our first week of having a little fun here. Fantasy Sports Daily, Kyle, Elfrink, and Ray Flowers. And I should say this right from the top because in the history of radio, in the history of broadcasting, in the history of live streaming, YouTube, Spotify, podcasting, whatever, in the history of it, we have never been able to truthfully say this next statement. So I might as well lead with it. Texas Rangers, World Series champions. Ray Flowers, we have waited well over 50 years to say that. And now I can say it. I'm not lying. I'm not gesturing to the heavens, hoping it happens. It is official. Rangers are the world champions of 2023.
They are. And, congrats and all that good stuff. It's remarkable. They didn't have their, I guess, arguably best offensive player. Corey Seager's pretty good. They didn't have their best guy at the end. They didn't have their two best pitchers in Scherzer and DeGrom, and they still emerged victorious. So kudos to them. It's a tremendous season.
Yeah, tremendous season. Pretty dominating, I thought, in the World Series. And everybody has their moment where things change. I still go back to game 1, Ray, when Seager hit that 9th inning home run. And I know the Diamondbacks came back and won game 2, but losing that first game, and if you had stolen that first game, and if you'd taken care of business in that first game, I really feel it would have altered the series for Arizona. And then the other one I'd throw in there, if I look at the why of a 5-game series, as soon as Brandon Pfaadt kind of blinked, that kind of blew up the whole plan, I think, for Arizona. He'd been so critical, and his success as a pitcher had been so important to Arizona in the previous series that once he wasn't super Pfaadt, he was regular Pfaadt. I think that's when the Diamondback kind of ran into the trouble, because then you run into the bullpen game. That obviously went horrid. Last night, I mean, they had guys on base the whole night. Arizona can look at themselves and say, we lost because of us, guys. Because, Ray, they had guys all over the base pass against Eovaldi. They just couldn't punch them through in game 5.
Yeah, I think Eovaldi is one of the big storylines, obviously, with the situations with DeGrom and Scherzer. They needed someone to step up, and he was great at the start of the season. Then he got hurt, and then he came back down the stretch, and he was horrid. And his ERA was like 9. He was horrible. And then the playoffs hit, and all of a sudden it was first half Eovaldi again. So mad credit to him. He's got a growing reputation as one of these pitchers that you just got to get him to the big game. And when you're in the big game, he gets it done. And, you don't have to go out there and strike out 10 guys to have success, obviously. And, he pitched his way through another strong effort in this postseason.
So congratulations to the Rangers. If you're already thinking about futures for next season, and I know Ray Flowers is.
Of course.
World Series champion in 2024. This is courtesy of DraftKings Sportsbook. Atlanta's at plus 700, the Dodgers 750, Houston 900, Rangers are 900. Those are the only 4 teams that are below plus 1,000. I always say this, if and I'm not one of these people, and I don't think either is Ray Flowers, but if I'm sitting here on November 2nd and I'm trying to predict a world champion 12 months from now, I would hone it, because it's a total crapshoot. I would hone in on a team that I could see, they were competitive this year, and I could see them spending bucks to kind of make that move to a title next season. So, Ray, I look at that, and I look at this list, and someone like if Ohtani were to end up with one of these long shots, it would totally change things. Mm-hmm. But, Ray, if I were looking at this list right now and putting those things together, competitive, and they could actually spend some money, they could, change their odds based off of free agency moves this year, I might put the Seattle Mariners, who are plus 2,000.
Mm-hmm.
The Red Sox are also plus 2,000. I could see that one. And then Baltimore at 1,600. Baltimore, the hesitation there, Ray, is, are they going to spend money? Are they going to go out and improve the pitching staff? Are they going to go out and maybe get a really good veteran 4R5 hitter? I don't know if they will. And I would sit here and say it's doubtful, right? I mean, the Orioles, they should be spending money, but right. I just look at that ownership, and I don't know if the Orioles are going to make any kind of splash this offseason.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It'll be really interesting to see, because, the Rangers lost 102 games 2 years ago, right? And so we see this massive quick turnaround. And, they're the third team ever to go from a 100-win season to 2 years later winning the World Series. One of those being the 69 Mets, the other one being the 1914 Braves. So it doesn't happen very often. The teams that have the ability to spend are obviously at an advantage. But as we saw yet again this year, you don't have to spend $200 million to have a competitive team. The Orioles will be a really interesting case because, they've been, in the second division in the AL East for years. All of a sudden, it seems like everywhere you look, they got a potential superstar, like all over the place. Are they going to spend money? Because it's kind of like the football thing when you have the rookie quarterback, right? You're not spending any money on your players. Go get some veterans to augment that. This year, their power move was what? Kyle Gibson. So let's see what they do. Because, if they make a nice addition or two, that's a tremendous group of talented youngsters they've got with the Orioles.
I wouldn't sleep on your Giants either.
Yeah.
They're plus 3,000. Bob Melvin's the manager. They're going to spend money, right? They have to, Ray. They've got to spend money. They got to get pitching. They got to get hitters. They're willing to spend, right?
I think they are. They've been, you and I have talked for years. The Cardinals and the Giants very similar in terms of how they build teams, and they're not the group that's out there signing the number 1 or 2 free agent. They get free agents, 26, 27, 29, right? That's the stable veterans. There is money to spend. They tried to get Aaron Judge. They tried to get Carlos Correa. They understand that not only do they need that impact on the field, but they need it off the field. The Giants are kind of floundering. The Niners everyone loves. The Warriors everyone loves.
Have the Sharks won a game yet this year, Ray?
The Sharks were predicted to finish 32 out of 32 teams. The not that the Giants are falling out of relevancy in the Bay Area, but the ownership, I think, understands they have to make a big move, again, for the product on the field as well as off the field.
Yeah, I'm not going to let you slide on this Sharks thing. Last I checked, they were winless. Yeah, they're 0-8-1. They're getting ready to play tonight against Vancouver. 0-8-1. Man, rough time.
Future is bright, Kyle. Future is bright.
It's always bright. Yeah, what is it? Always darkest before the dawn. I guess
maybe we're
getting close to the dawn for the San Jose Sharks. So again, congratulations to the Ranger. Former Giants manager Bruce Bochy is now one of, I think, 5 managers, maybe 6 managers with at least 4 World Series titles. Corey Seager is now a 2-time World Series MVP. So congrats on that front to everything. And now the offseason begins. Free agency, all that fun. We'll see some trades. Shohei Ohtani, the market opens beginning here in just a few days. So let's get rolling with that. And obviously right here on Fantasy Sports Daily, we will follow all the ins and outs and the moves as we go through the offseason. As for today, we start with that World Series news, but the main focus is going to be a lot of football. Thursday night is here. Week 9 is here. No better way, right, than to get things rolling with Will Levis against Mitch Trubisky. Actually, it may be Will Levis against Kenny Pickett. Kind of sounds like Pickett will be playing tonight for the Steelers. That will get things rolling in this week number 9 of the NFL season. Ray and I will give our thoughts, including what the heck to do with Najee Harris. It's just not happening this year, much like it didn't really happen last season for the Steeler running back. Ryan Clifford going to join us here in about 5 minutes' time. We'll get his thoughts on the DFS plays for tonight's matchup between the Steelers and the Titans. We'll also get you set with the latest injury news on this Thursday. We will also take a look at some halfway home numbers at the running back position. If you caught us yesterday, we dealt with the quarterbacks. We'll tackle some numbers with the running backs here a bit later. And then we'll close it down with Ani Sridar. If you've been following us on the podcast, which has been going on for a couple of months, that has now segued into this live stream. We talk EPL, FPL each and every Thursday with Ani Sridar. He is going to join us coming up a bit later in the show. So we are jam-packed with things to get to. Also, Ray, it appears we have an update for those who would like to subscribe to the audio portion of our podcast. That is now very, very easy to do, correct?
Yeah, obviously the folks are right now watching us on YouTube, youtube.com/@Elite Plus Network. You can go there and watch the show live as you're doing. You can watch it on the recording if you just go there and you click on the live tab. You can also click on the About tab. Again, that's youtube.com/@Elite Plus Network. Click on the About tab, and that gives you a bunch of links. And 2 of the links, exciting for us here on the show, 2 of the links now include Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So you might actually be listening to us in either one of those 2 locations right now as well. But if you haven't yet, you can go to, again, youtube.com/@Elite Elite Plus Network. We can also just go to Spotify or go to Apple Podcasts and type in the words Fantasy Sports Daily. But we are available in both those spots now, so you can also download it and partake in the show in a podcast form, just as you do with so many other avenues probably in the fantasy world.
And of course, we're relying on a bunch of zeros and ones to do this. But every day, Ray, once we sign off here with what we do via Facebook, YouTube, X, whatever it is, where people can watch us live, what's it take? About half an hour to maybe get posted on the audio side. And if people are subscribers, that will immediately then download into their podcast player, right?
Right. I can verify that it's about, well, I can't verify. I will say this. It looks like a half hour on Spotify. Okay. That's what it was yesterday. On Apple Podcasts, that just came in yesterday afternoon, so I'm not really sure the delay there. But let's just say I've talked to a bunch of people that strongly suggest that in both Spotify and Apple Podcast case, within an hour of the show ending, it should be available in both sources in a podcast.
Okay, so great news. And kudos, public applause, everybody, to Ray Flowers, who seemingly every day is creating new and exciting ventures and connections and places to download. So, Ray, I will say we've always joked about you and your tech team, which I've never seen these other guys, but they must exist because one man cannot do this on his own like you have done this week.
Can you tell my lady that? She's like, yesterday I was talking to her about this. She's like, they put you in charge of this? I'm like, what? How did I get this tag that I don't know what the heck's going on? I used to put.
I don't know, Ray. If they'd asked me, I would have said, screw you. That's not my job. I'm a talker. I'm not a programmer. I'm a talker.
It's so funny. I used to install car stereos in high school. Like, this is legitimately true. My friends, this was back in the late 80s.
4 wires, man. I mean,
no, they're not putting speakers in, amps, woofers. But I used to do that when I was 17 years old in high school. Like, I'm not some technological doofus, but yeah, I do.
Yeah, if anybody needs their Alpine CD changer installed, Ray Flowers, the Oracle, he's your guy.
I had an Alpine in my dash. I had the radio. I never had the changer. I had the single CD player. I did have an Alpine there. But yeah, those were the days. But yeah, so thank you, Kyle. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of work. I'm looking forward to next week when I can focus more directly on the show than everything surrounding.
You know, we're supposed to talk about the Steelers and the Titans, but Ray, I would actually rather talk about you installing car stereos back in the 90s. How often do you think you installed a car stereo that was hot, that had been stolen, and somebody was putting it in their own car after they had yanked it out of some other poor dude's car?
Yeah, half the time, a third of the time, probably. I remember too, my first deck was, and they were called decks back then, right? My first deck was a Denon, had a tape deck in it. And I remember I used to take my Alpine, speaking of that, my Alpine radio, because of the fact that people stole stuff back then, right? You would, and these, for people nowadays that this sounds ridiculous, you would take the entire radio out.
Yeah, I was just thinking, when was the last time anyone heard of their car stereo getting stolen? I recall, Ray, this was like a normal part of high school. Yeah. My car got broken into.
Absolutely.
Somebody took the car stereo.
No. So I remember this. Matthew's Top of the Hill Daily City is where I bought my Alpine deck. It cost $548. Okay. And that was like
Ray Flowers, remember?
Yeah. In 1989, which is probably like $1,000 today, right? And so you would pull the entire radio out. I put it in a Case Logic, foamy bag, and I'd have my 30-pound backpack, and then I'd have my 2-pound radio hanging off my side, because you had to take it because people would swipe it. But yeah, unfortunately, I would have assumed that some tweeters and woofers and probably some radios were probably hot when I helped to install them.
Yeah, good to hear. Good to hear. We used to be so afraid of people yanking out our car stereo that they eventually came out with faces that you could pop off.
The faceplate?
Yeah. Yes.
That was much better than the entire radio.
You'd pack those with you.
Yeah.
Subwoofers, all that silliness. It was kind of crazy. Okay, let's move to the matter at hand. Thursday night football. Again, Ryan Clifford's going to join us in a few moments. We'll talk to him about the DFS slate. His showdown column is going to be popping up momentarily at fantasyguru.com. We'll talk DFS with Ryan, Ray, but for the season-long player, many are sitting here going into tonight's game against Tennessee, and they're an owner of Najee Harris, and they are a pissed-off owner of Najee Harris. This has been, last year was bad. This year's worse, Ray. It's worse than even last season. We've got 1 touchdown on 84 carries. We've barely topped 300 yards on 84 carries. There's been 13 receptions, which has helped. but that's a pretty far cry from what he was doing last year in terms of reception totals. What's going on with Najee Harris, and how much leash do we keep giving this guy? Like in starting lineups, Ray, I know what you're going to tell me. He's on the field and he's getting work, and I believe in that. But we're now half the way through the season, Ray. There hasn't been a hit. Has there? Has there been a single hit in any of his games yet this year?
Yeah, he got scored a touchdown once.
In a game with 53 yards and 3 catches.
Yeah. I mean, and every Thursday morning, my article comes out, and it's up today, the game day matchup article. And so breaking down this game as well as all the other games over at fantasyguru.com. And again, don't forget to use that promo code FSD20 for a discount on all the products over there: football, baseball, basketball, hockey, whatever you want to get involved with. I think that, one of the problems we've had here is that the backfield has been shared to a higher degree than we anticipated. Jaylen Warren hasn't done anything. He really hasn't. He catches 3 passes a week. He hasn't done anything. But the Steelers have given him more workload than we anticipated. You look at the last couple of weeks, and I mentioned this in the article. It's really interesting because we look at it now and we think Harris is the guy in the early downs. Warren is the guy in the later downs. The last 2 weeks, Harris has more catches, and he's only run 2 fewer routes. So I think that we're starting to see the team realize that they will have more success getting the ball to Harris than they will to Warren. So I think that 15 touch a week thing is pretty stable with Harris. I think the real problem is that the offense is boring. They're not running him north-south a lot. They're going east-west with Harris, which isn't really his game. And they've had poor quarterback play. So I think it's a whole bunch of stuff here. Harris is still on that 20 to 25 range each week at the running back position. He's a bottom RB2 because of the workload.
It's interesting with the opponent tonight, Tennessee. They've been very average, and they're average against the run, because early in the season, nobody could run against Tennessee. The last 3 games, though, Indianapolis went for 193 on the ground. Baltimore went for 139. And then last week, Atlanta went for 140. So Tennessee is trending in the incorrect direction here as they get set for Pittsburgh. And maybe, Najee Harris will finally have his breakthrough moment. You've still got to start him tonight, don't you, Ray? He has to. I doubt anybody has great options. He's still like an RB2, despite these really lackluster efforts this season.
Yeah, I mean, the Lions are out, the Broncos, the Niners, and the Jaguars. And there's some substantial running backs in the fantasy game on those 4 teams that aren't available this week. So it depends how you put a team together and all that kind of stuff, as we know, Kyle. But I think in general, most people are probably still starting Najee Harris.
Let's stay with this game. Let's talk DFS. Let's talk showdown. Whether it's a Monday night football game or a Thursday night football game, we love to check in with Ryan Clifford, who is our showdown analyst. He tackles the 1-game slates that we have on Sunday night, Monday night, and, of course, Thursday night like this evening. You see, Ryan, good to have you back with us, sir. Good to be talking a Steelers-Titans game, a brand new week of football. And Ray and I were just discussing Najee Harris. I'm looking – what's the price tag for Najee Harris this week? It can't be to its high water point, but what do we think of Najee for tonight? Let's see that price tag. I'm waiting for this to load. You probably have it, Ryan, but let's see. If you want to captain Najee Harris, it looks like it's going to run you $10,800.
10,800, you got it.
Yeah, that seems crazy on the captain side. If you just wanted to play him, $7,200. But what do you think of Najee Harris's outlook for tonight, Ryan?
I don't really like either of the Steeler running backs, honestly. Tennessee's top 10 in the league against opposing running backs as far as fantasy points go. That's what we're talking about here on Showdown. So to me, it's more the pass game for the Steelers if I am looking in Pittsburgh's direction. I do like Harris a little bit more than Jaylen Warren, but they're very close. They're pretty much splitting snaps, and neither one of them has really done much. So it's fade for me on the running backs.
Ryan, if we go to Derrick Henry on the other side, he's like $700 trillion. He's the most expensive guy, $17,400 here. Like Kyle was talking about, if you use him as a captain, 11-6, just regular style. The offense looked much better with Will Levis under center last week. And if they can pass, maybe they can run. And we saw 100 yards from Henry. And where are we at with Henry, who is the most expensive guy on the slate tonight?
Yeah, he's my top captain. He's generally the most expensive captain on the slate when he's involved. Only Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Justin Jefferson have been an optimal showdown captain more than Derrick Henry over the last 3 years. we've seen this story play out before with these rookie quarterbacks. They come in, they look amazing in their first game. Their opposition gets some film on them, gets a week to prepare, and they come out and look completely flat the second game. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen here, but we have seen that happen often with these rookie quarterbacks. So I'm pumping the brakes a little on Levis, and Derrick Henry will be my top play tonight.
Ryan Clifford of fantasyguru.com talking to us about that Thursday night showdown here. Talk to us a little bit more about the youngster with the Titans, Will Levis. You just mentioned him. He's 9,600 here. He's third on the slate. He showed great ball placement, which Jeff Mans has talked about all week. He opened up the offense. He completed deep passes. The offense through the air was better than it had been any point this season. Doesn't sound like you're overly excited about him in this matchup this evening, though.
I'm not overly excited about any of the offensive players in this matchup tonight. This is like the typical Thursday night matchup that we've all grown to love to hate. DeAndre Hopkins, this is a major boost for him, especially. We saw that last week. He's needed a guy like this that can push the ball deep accurately. So I do like Hopkins tonight. It'll only take one of those plays really to get Hopkins into that optimal lineup. So I think that he belongs there, whether that's flex or captain. Levis, as far as the showdown slate, he's not the type that's going to take off running. His senior year of college, he finished with negative rushing yards. Of course, they count sacks in college as negative rushing yards, but that's what we need for captainship in showdown. So as far as captain goes, I'm not looking at Levis at all tonight. I'm going to leave him out of my pool. Kenny Pickett is another guy. He's been just one time an optimal captain since he's gotten into the league, 20 games so far. So quarterbacks, again, as far as, talking captain, are going to be a fade for me. I do think we'll see Levis come back down to earth this week. I don't know that he'll really struggle here, but definitely don't think we're going to see, 3 bomb touchdowns to DeAndre Hopkins again.
Yeah. Well, and when we talk quarterbacks, when people build, a showdown lineup, they're always going to have at least one quarterback. That's a given. I would suspect coming off the first effort that Levis had, most of the ownership's going to go in that direction. What do you think of the other side here? I mean, are you a fool if you spend money on a guy like Kenny Pickett, or it sounds like he's going to play, but even Mitch Trubisky, if he were to get the start, are you wasting your money on the Steelers side here? Because that's kind of the differential play at quarterback, just because you'd have to suspect so many people are going to go with the rookie on Tennessee.
Yeah, for sure. And I talk about that in my write-up today. Levis is going to get a ton of ownership with that game fresh in people's minds. So I do like the Steelers. As I said, I like their pass game more than their run game. So as far as that goes, I think Pickett's a fine play. Listen, we got to play 6 players from this game. So, as I always say, we've got to play at least one quarterback. So I think really it depends on how your lineup is built. What are the rest of the pieces in your lineup? If you've got some Tennessee pass catchers, maybe lean Levis. Got the Steeler pass catchers, maybe lean Pickett.
It's not overly surprising, Ryan, to have a game in 2023 where you look at the tight ends and you go, no. Maybe I'm wrong and there's a tight end here that you're interested in. I'm going to assume the answer to that is probably not this evening. So talk to us a little bit more about those pass catchers. You hit on, DeAndre Hopkins in depth. Talk to us a little bit more about the things on the Steelers side. Who is going to be catching passes and who intrigues you tonight?
Yeah, I was looking for, Connor Hayward. He's the Steelers, tight end 1 with Freiermuth out, 2,800. Listen, 1 touchdown at that salary is probably going to put him into the lineup. So I'm probably not touching Okonkwo, 4,200 for the Titans. He's been having some issues dropping the ball and just has not played out the way I think many of us thought he would this year. So as far as the Steeler pass catchers go, Deontay Johnson, 14 targets last week. I think he's kind of reclaimed his role there as like the top pass catcher. Pickens, he's never had more than 10 targets in a game in his career. He is that big play threat, though. So if you're looking for upside, I think Pickens is the play. Johnson, more of a floor play for me. I think last year he had a ridiculous run of not getting into the end zone. So I do like Johnson on volume for a game like this where I don't expect a lot of scoring. That PPR benefits a guy like Johnson. So I think it's a coin flip between the two. I think you can play both of them. I like either one of them at captain, but I think I do lean towards Johnson being the safer play.
Well, and if you want to dig deeper, we always like throwing out some cheap plays. The Steelers have a couple of guys that are like in that 800 to maybe 1,200 range with Austin. Allen Robinson sitting down though too. Now, neither of those guys has had many moments. I think Robinson's still looking for his first touchdown with the Steelers. Do either of those guys kind of fit as that sixth player, if you will, at that price tag of 800 to 1,000?
I really wanted to like Calvin Austin this year. It's just not happened for him so far. So, Allen Robinson is kind of a boring play to me. If I'm looking for that boring kind of safer play, I'm looking to Kyle Phillips, who's just $800 on Tennessee's side. Nick Westbrook at Keeney is $3,400 for the Titans, and he's pretty much their second wide receiver on the field all the time. So I don't like the Steelers secondary pieces as far as the pass game goes. I think if I'm looking for the cheaper pieces there, I'm going to look to Tennessee.
Article should be posting up early this afternoon at fantasyguru.com. Ryan Clifford with the showdown breakdown, going through some of the rules of the road if you're playing a showdown site. Obviously, specific thoughts on this game, some lower end dart throws, kind of how he sees this game going. This is, I believe, one of 5 games this weekend that has a game total in like the 30s, which is kind of ugly. Any reason to suspect we get above that number? Ryan, what's your model say for this game tonight?
I actually have not looked at what the number is. What is the number?
37.5, I think, is what I saw.
I've got 34.6.
Okay. That's a pretty significant under there.
Yeah.
So tune in tonight, everybody, at 8:15. Maybe you can win some money, if nothing else. Discord's going to be open. Ryan's going to be in there, as well as Ray and the rest of the crew. So if you got any specific questions as you finish off these builds, by all means, do head into Discord to get the live answer leading up to the kickoff. The inactives and actives, they'll come out about 90 minutes before kickoff at 8:15 tonight. Ryan, a pleasure as always, man. Enjoy the weekend. Have fun watching some football, and we'll report back to duty and check in with you on Monday next week.
All right, thanks, guys.
Ryan Clifford with us. Want to remind everybody, Sunday night for the game, which is a big one. That's actually one of the few really interesting games this week. Cincinnati and Buffalo. That'll get coming your way on Sunday night, and Ryan does do an individual write-up for that showdown slate. And, of course, for the rest of the slates, including Miami, Kansas City, which I guess works as a showdown, we will have write-ups all weekend long at fantasyguru.com. Tomorrow on the broadcast, we are set to be joined by our friend Armando Marsal. He is going to help us with some football thoughts going in to week 9. Looking at the rest of this week 9, kind of pulling away from this game this evening, some injury news. Darren Waller, Ray, for anybody who's got him, I don't think you're going to have him for a while. I mean, when a player says, oh, yeah, I'm going to miss a few games, and this is an injury that's going to keep me out, to me, Darren Waller and this hamstring, Ray, done for November. I'd really be surprised if he's back before December 1st.
Yeah, and that's obviously been a big question over in the Discord at fantasyguru.com. What do I do? What do I do? And I say this nicely, you don't draft Darren Waller. I mean, there are certain players that we just know through history have a hard time staying on the field. And when you talk about the investment of in Darren Waller on draft day versus the likely return, you are always going to need a second tight end. You and I have talked about this a lot. I don't like clogging up a roster with a second tight end. You're not going to be able to find a guy that theoretically can catch 5 for 50 each week like Waller anyway. So it's just, there are people with Waller in a rough spot, but I agree with you. I think that ultimately everyone has to be expecting him to miss this week, if not multiple weeks with this injury. So you're going to have to grab that second tight end, and hopefully there's someone out there that can help you out.
Additionally, we're still not confirmed as to who the QB will be for the Giants. Daniel Jones has been limited this week. Tyrod Taylor's not been practicing this week. I'm kind of leaning towards thinking the Giants must be planning on Jones being under center, but that is not confirmed. It would help matters for this offense, but Waller out, and we'll see with Daniel Jones. Doesn't look good for Matthew Stafford either. Rams are on the road in Green Bay. Stafford's a QB2, Ray. It's not like a back-breaking loss to not have him for week 9. But what about the loss and what it means for Nakua and Kupp? Are they still, like, to me, they're still starters in a PPR setup. I would have to still have them out there. In a non-PPR, I think Kupp, he's a stud, so you got to play him. Green Bay doesn't offer anything that's frightening. Nakua, you might have better options than him, but in a PPR, Ray, I'm still pro Puka, pro Cooper, even without Stafford for this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that the Rams have done the last couple of years, and it's been with Stafford under center, but one thing they've done for the most part is they've had if you think of a pyramid, their pyramid is very narrow, right?
Mhm.
It's a couple of guys, and then there's nothing at the bottom, right? It's just there's a couple. It's like the Raiders, like exactly where the ball is going in the Rams offense. It's going to Puka, it's going to Cup, it's going to Henderson. They'll get a little bit of Higbee there, maybe a little Atwell. That's it, right? There's not a lot of mouths to feed in this offense. So I agree with you. I think that even if Stafford is out with that UCL in his thumb, you still have to feel pretty solid about going Cup and Nakua. I will say this, that Nakua's got a knee issue. It doesn't sound like a major deal, but he was hobbling around a little bit, and he's missing some practice time this week. And, 2 of the last 3 games, he's been under 45 yards. The bar is set so high with expectations for him that I think people, are they going to be happy with him having the second greatest rookie season of all time? You know what I mean? It's like if he slides back. So, he's got a little bit of an issue there. A move to a backup quarterback is a little bit of an issue, though I still agree with you on balance. I think it'd be hard to sit him this week.
Well, and Brett Rippon would be the guy for Stafford. And again, it looks like he's going to be under center going up against Jordan Love. The 2 running backs there with the Rams, Ray, I think you got to play them too. Like if you're rolling Henderson or Freeman, and you mentioned the bye weeks and injuries that we have, and I think most people have that option of one of these 2 guys. I don't know how many have both, and they got to choose each week between one. But for most fantasy leagues, these guys probably looking at 12 to 15 touches in a game with Brett Rippon as their QB. I guess it's where we're at in week 9 of the season. But Royce Freeman, Darrell Henderson, fire them up, I think, for this week.
Yeah, and again, you can use the promo code FSD20 over at fantasyguru.com to sign up for any of our products. Peek behind the curtain there for those people that aren't subscribers. If you look at the rankings right now over at fantasyguru.com, in a PPR setup, we've got Mr. Henderson at 24 at running back and Royce Freeman at 32. So it's exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, it's not like either one of these guys makes you feel great. It's not like either one of these guys is someone that you're pushing to get in the lineup per se. But at the same time, given guys being on bye, given the nature of backfields, both guys are in play for some people this week.
A couple of other things at quarterback. We're still sitting and wondering about the QB in Cleveland, PJ Walker, Deshaun Watson. Hopefully we'll find out maybe today. I mean, Watson has been at practice. I think it was a limited session on Wednesday. So that would probably lead to another limited session today. We'll just see how the shoulder reacts. Don't know if anybody's uber excited about Cleveland or what they have under center. Josh Allen did not practice yesterday. Remember, they're playing on Sunday night. Shoulder injury is what we're hearing. It doesn't appear to be anything too worrisome, so it looks like we're in the clear there. Gus Edwards did not practice for Baltimore. Not certain if that's a maintenance thing. He had a lot of work on Sunday against Arizona, so maybe they're just kind of giving him a Veterans Day off. Other guys who didn't practice on Wednesday, Tyler Lockett, undisclosed. Amari DeMarcado, toe. Drake London, groin. Damian Pierce, an ankle. David Njoku, an ankle. And then Curtis Samuel with a toe. So we'll see what the status is on those guys for Thursday. Some other limiteds. Ray mentioned Nakua. We mentioned Daniel Jones. We mentioned Deshaun Watson. Luke Musgrave, for those who care. Rookie tight end. He's got an ankle injury. He is also limited on that front. Speaking of articles we got up at Fantasy Guru, and speaking of week 9, Ray, your game day article, it's up, it's available, it's ready to read, and it's a lot of reading for those who want something to get prepped for Sunday, right?
Yeah, and this week it's small, it's only 12,000 words. Yeah, I know it's a lot, but we have so many. I kind of look at it, and pardon my way of saying it, but it's the gateway drug to the week. Right. It's the overarching. Here's what we got. Here are all the matchups. Here are the players. Here's what they've done of late. Here's what the matchup this week looks like. And then you can dive in deeper, like with things with Ryan Clifford when you're talking about Thursday Night Football. Yeah. We've got a whole host of articles each week. We're talking about red zone work and wide receiver cornerback matchups and breaking things down in more detail. So this article also, which is seasonal based, ends up becoming part of the DFS package over at fantasyguru.com as well, because all the graphics and all the charts and the tables and all the ranking stuff that I have in those 12 to 14,000 words most week then get augmented by Armando Marsal, who adds in DFS content. So whether you're a seasonal subscriber at fantasyguru.com or part of our DFS group, either way, you get access to the article.
A little more football to come your way. Ani Sridar waiting in the wings to talk some English Premier League here on a Thursday. But if you caught yesterday's edition of Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com. Yesterday, we talked about quarterbacks and some of the more, I don't know if head scratching is the term you wanted to use, but some of the more eye catching numbers that we've seen through the first 8 weeks of the NFL season. And remember, we're getting ready for week 9. A lot of fantasy leagues are going to end in week 17. Regular seasons will end in like week 14. So the season is pretty well half done, if not beyond half done for some of us. So we thought throughout the week, starting with quarterbacks yesterday, running backs today, and then wide receivers and tight ends tomorrow, we take a look at some of those halfway home numbers. So Ray, like I said, we dealt with the guys who sling the football around yesterday. Today, the guys who carry the football. Leading off with the fact, yesterday I said, wow, Tua Tagovailoa leading the NFL in passing yardage. Travis Etienne, Ray, leading the NFL in rushing attempts. It's been a big push this year from where we were last year with Jacksonville to the amount of work he is getting this year. He has been a horse for the Jaguars. And again, nobody else in football. And yeah, you can point to injuries and all that, but Derrick Henry hasn't missed a game. Christian McCaffrey's been out there pretty well every week. Saquon Barkley's missed some games, but he obviously racks up totals. Of all of them, though, Ray, it's Travis Etienne at the top.
Yeah, I mean, he's added 6 carries a game on average compared to where he was last season. And last year he had 220 carries. This year he's on pace for 330. I mean, and I don't know. If we go back to draft day with ETN, it was this guy's going to run it 200 times. He's going to catch 60 passes, and there you go. This level of workload, I don't think anyone ever expected out of ETN. I know some people. I even complained in the listener league that we have here at fantasyguru.com with obviously the people, listeners, followers of the shows. I had ETN in that league, and I was like the 9th round, and I was going to take Bigsby, and someone grabbed him in front of me, and I'm like, "What are you doing? Like, why would you grab? You don't have ETN. Why are you grabbing?" And the person said, "Well, I think Bigsby's going to be a big part of the offense." Bigsby hasn't done jack. He's not even on the field. It's all ETN. He's on the field all the time. He gets to work all the time. And he's rewarded, those in the fantasy space with a strong season today.
And one thing that also surprises me about that number, Ray, I was a huge proponent leading into the season of Jacksonville's going to throw. They're going to have Trevor Lawrence throwing the football 600 times. What has happened, though, is last season they were 10th in passing attempts. This year they're 17th. Last year, they were 17th in rushing attempts. This year, they're 9th. I am stunned, Ray. They flip-flop those numbers. And honestly, Jacksonville, they're 6-2. And I guess when you rank teams according to records, that puts them near the top. But having watched plenty of the Jaguars this year, they haven't looked very good. I've not been impressed with their offense. They're winning games, and I think eventually it'll click. But I'm really surprised, Ray, that those two numbers, the rushing attempts and the passing attempts, have flip-flopped this year with Jacksonville.
Yeah, and I think that's really reflected in Calvin Ridley, right? Their big addition this offseason, the first game of the year, first half of his first game with the club, he caught 7 passes for 92 yards and a touchdown. And we're like, yeah, this is it, man. This is going to go. They got Kirk, they got Ingram, they got Zay Jones, and it just hasn't happened. And, it's been some game flow stuff. It's been some injury stuff. It's been some poor performance stuff. But I agree with you. This, not drawing a direct comparison, but the team right now seems very much like the Giants of 2022, right? It's like they're winning games, and you look at the crew, and you're not overly impressed necessarily by any of the pieces. But in the end, the record's there. They're giving themselves a shot at the playoffs. But in the fantasy space, other than ETN and Ingram, I guess Kirk. But, it hasn't quite gone according to plan for most of us.
The next halfway home number that I've got also kind of deals with ETN. Mentioned he's number 1 in rushing attempts. 7 of the top 15 for rushing attempts this year are guys who are averaging under 4 yards a carry. And surprisingly, that includes ETN. He's at 3.9. Here are the other guys: ETN, Jacobs, Barkley, Damian Pierce, Pollard, Madison, and Algier. Ray, I'm a huge proponent of quantity. Like, those guys are getting quantity. They're not having any success. And it's almost like, running backs are devalued, but even having successful running backs, nobody even cares about. Like, these guys are getting a ton of the football, unless, I'm not going to say that's an awful number, less than 4. But, Ray, we're just not used to seeing guys who get the football this month at under 4 yards a pop. That's something that's really changed in the last decade.
It has. And, I think that speaks to the idea of, the run is really complementary. What are they doing with these guys? They're trying to run the clock out. They're trying to keep a lead. They're looking to, just move the chains, because you're right. It's not good. It's not a scenario where you look at a guy and you say, well, we're going to give him the ball 20 times a week, and if we get 3.8 yards a carry, no coach is going to say that. It's halfway through the year. I think we have enough data to look at it and feel pretty good that that's kind of where we're at. It's not like a 1 or 2 game scenario, but yeah, it's disappointing. The volume, like you said, volume is king in fantasy, but it'd be nice if there's a little production with it as well.
Zach Moss, number 2 in rushing yardage. Ray, where are we standing for the second half on Zach Moss? We thought 2 weeks ago he was going to lose work to Jonathan Taylor, yet every week it's nearly equal in terms of touches. So are we going to live with that the next 2 months, you think?
I mean, in this, I think, and Jeff Mans and I talked about this in the Elite Sports Show on Sirius XM yesterday, I think this goes to show you why teams don't pay running backs. They gave him, they backed up the truck and said, here's gold bullion, Mr. Taylor. And then what do they do? Keep giving the ball to Zach Moss.
Is that how you make the deal work out? Is you pay him a lot of money, give him 3-4 years, whatever it was. And the way we make him survive is by giving plenty of work to the cheap guy in Zach Moss.
Yeah, maybe. And I mean, it's working. Both guys are having success, right? They're filling roles. I think it's strange that they didn't trade Moss, because his value is as high as it's going to be. Like, you just gave Taylor, one of the highest contracts you've ever seen at running back. Like that, this guy is going to be the lead in the offense. I think in the case, though, of these two, we are at a scenario, as we're discussing, where the running back position is not overly exciting, where there's not necessarily oodles of production. I think it's conceivable that if you have both Moss and Taylor, and I do, and Scott Fishbowl, I think that if you have both these guys, it's conceivable this week and moving forward to consider starting both of them as top 25 running backs.
Jalen Hurts, not a running back, but he's doing a lot of running. I mean, he's got the same amount of carries as Breece Hall.
Crazy.
But 35 of his 78 carries this year have gone for first downs. Talking about Jalen Hurts. And I guess that speaks, Ray, some of those, sure, it's a 7-yard run and he gets you a first down, but it's just on and on and on with this, brotherly shove thing. And if you look, Jalen Hurts has always been a runner. This year, more than ever, they're using this 1-yard push on 4th and 1. His yards per carry is down to 3.8. Last year, it was 4.6. The year before was 5.6. So he's still getting a lot of rushing attempts, Ray, as many as ever, but so much of it is going for fewer yards than we're used to with Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, because I think a lot of it is the short stuff, right? Like you're talking about the 4th and 1s and all that. But I think it's also fascinating. And I know he's thrown a bunch of picks this year and all of that, and he's dealing with the knee issue, but he's thrown for 275 yards in 6 straight games. Like, you get that level of offensive production through the air, augmented by the work with the legs that you're talking about. And it's no surprise why people drafted him so highly in 2023.
And I mentioned the rushing attempts are about the same that they've been for Jalen Hurts. The touchdowns are also about the same. Like, he's at 6 right now, rushing touchdowns. So he's got a very good shot at a 3rd straight season with double-digit rushing touchdowns, which throughout most of the NFL history, you never see. But it's happening with Hurts. We've seen it with some other guys too. But the yardage, he's going to lose about, at this pace, again, we're just pacing this stuff out with our numbers, he's going to lose about 200 yards from what we got last season and from what we got the year before. So it's still good, but it's a little different with Jalen Hurts. It's a lot of that straight into the gut. And I'm still confounded, Ray. I know it's successful, but there's your, what's he make? $45, $50 million a season. And like on 4th and 1, you're just shoving them into like 4,000 pounds of people. It's like
4,000 pounds.
It's got to be close to that.
Yeah, it's a lot of people. Yeah,
a lot of people. They're regularly doing it with their crown jewel of the franchise. Those are some halfway home numbers when it comes to running backs. Again, tomorrow, right here on Fantasy Sports Daily, we'll tackle some of those halfway home numbers at wide receiver. A few more minutes left in this Thursday edition of what we do here with FSD. Again, that promo code, you can see at the bottom, FSD20, 20% off everything at fantasyguru.com. And that includes our EPL coverage. Yes, did you know we have English Premier League coverage? Yes, we do. And our next guy talks it every week. He's in Discord every weekend. He's writing up columns every weekend, covering the DFS slate on Saturdays with the main slate. He talks some FPL with us as well here. Ani Sridar back with us. Mr. Ani, you're looking comfortable and warm on this Thursday. How's it going, man?
It's going great, Kyle. And yeah, warm for sure. The cold has finally hit the Northeast here. It's our first day in like the low 40s. So, have to get a little cozy. Yeah.
So you probably got 3 more of those in the closet you're ready to pile on when it gets into the teens. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the rotation is ready, and the shopping cart is also, the cart's full with coats and sweaters ready for purchase.
Speaking of cold, that was me last week in FPL. I was sitting here a week ago bragging about my huge effort in game week 9, over 100 points. Game week 10, I felt like in the 50s, and the reason is I went the 3rd round on captaincy. I went Ollie Watkins. I was trying to be different, trying to be cute, blew up in my face. Meanwhile, everybody else, Ani, who went Mo Salah or Erling Haaland, they did just fine. How about you in game week 10? Was it a winning week for you?
It was an average week. It was better than my week before. But yeah, I also went the Watkins route, unfortunately, with the captain. Didn't pay off. He looked great, but, we don't take great in points. We need goals. And we sadly did not get that.
I would still roll with him this week. Villa still has a matchup. Don't know if I'd captain him, but the matchup is still there certainly for him to be in lineups. And I guess the reason I wouldn't captain him, Ani, is because the 2 fallbacks when we talk about the armband each week, great matchups for Erling Haaland, for Mo Salah. You look at Haaland against Bournemouth. Mo Salah is at Luton Town. I guess the issue this week is which of the 2. I mean, I feel you're right either way. I'm probably going to go Haaland. How about you for the captaincy this week?
Yeah, I think Haaland is the 1A and then Salah comes in 1B. But I have to say, I wouldn't be shy going back to Watkins at captain. They get a good matchup against Forest. And, it's a saying we like to use in the fantasy industry. When others are fearful, let's be greedy here. And if, you're like middle of the pack and you're trying to get that boost, everyone's going to go away from Watkins this week because of what happened last week. But if you want to get a little different, Watkins is not a bad captain. Villa still have a great matchup. And, City might rotate their lineup and try to, keep Haaland healthy.
Villa's at Nottingham Forest. That's our first game on Sunday. A majority of the schedule is going to be locked and loaded on Saturday. I think 7 of the 10 matches this week are Saturday matchups. 8:30 a.m. is our first one. Man United is at Fulham. So that means lock is at 7 a.m. So you don't have to worry about Friday, but Saturday, if you are playing season long, you are going to worry about that 7 a.m. lock. The main slate's also a little different this week, Ani, because I guess maybe they haven't done daylight savings, or no, we haven't done it, but they have done it over in England. So instead of a 10 a.m. main slate that you always cover over at Fantasy Guru, it's actually 11 a.m. And it's a pretty big slate, Ani. I mean, we got 5 matches in that main slate. What's kind of the early read? I know you'll have the column Friday night, Saturday morning, but what's the early read on that 11 a.m. slate for Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, it's super exciting since last week we only had, a 2-game slate on Saturday, and then we had the main slate on, Sunday with the 3 games. But early lean is Manchester City. I mean, they're taking on Bournemouth, get as many pieces as possible and try to fit it in the lineup. And I think the sneaky value plays we might get is that Everton-Brighton game. The game total is sitting at 3.5. We've seen Everton play good football of recently. They've gotten unlucky with results, and Brighton have kind of fallen off of their early hot start. So that's another game where I'm going to be looking at getting pieces from.
Good news for Brighton. It sounds like Estupiñán could be back in the 11. The beauty of DFS is you find out an hour before you got to lock your DFS build. You can find out exactly who Brighton has on the field. You can find out exactly who Man City has on the field. And Ani's going to be in Discord live on Saturday morning to help you with some of those setups. Staying with a couple of games in that area, Brian Mbeumo. I saw a number over the previous month, Ani. I think 1.2 or 1.3 million people have sold off the Brentford midfielder. They've moved on. The last 2 weeks, he's exploded. Couple of weeks, double-digit points. Does everybody who sold him need to get back on board with him, or do you just bite your tongue and hope that you still made the right decision to move on?
Yeah, I mean, it's so 2 weeks ago when you used your wild card, I forgot to. So Embuemo was still in my lineup, and I reaped the rewards. But then last week I used my wild card. I shipped him off. Thought it was a tough matchup. Clearly wasn't. He produced again. I felt like a genius at the beginning of the year when I, quote unquote, drafted him week 1. But if you look at their schedule, they have a decent matchup against West Ham, but then Liverpool, Arsenal, and I think the time to get him back might be after that when they have Luton, Brighton, and Sheffield. So that could be when you get Embuemo back, because he does have 2 tougher fixtures coming up.
You mentioned you thought last week was going to be tough, but it wasn't. That was because he was playing your boys from Chelsea. Another sad effort for Chelsea, who always has these opportunities on the doorstep. They can't bang them home. I know the fixtures take a turn this week. The big matchup is involving Chelsea visiting Tottenham. That'll be on Monday afternoon. What's all this mean for Cole Palmer? Because everybody still looks at him. They love the price tag. They love the effort. They love what they've seen. But everything around him is a mess, Ani. Now you have the difficult fixtures. How are you handling Cole Palmer? Do you feel he still is a very important part of the puzzle for successful FPL teams?
I think he's cheap enough where you can roster him. He's only $5 million, right? So he's someone you could possibly have on the bench, sub in, or in the event someone doesn't play, he's someone who gets subbed in there, because he does have penalties taking equity. And that's really important here. So even if it's a tough matchup against, Man City, Newcastle coming up, Chelsea have played these tough teams well. 2-2 draw against Arsenal, 1-1 draw against Liverpool at the beginning of the year. It's these bad teams that they've really played down to their competition, which has been incredibly frustrating as a Chelsea fan. So I think Palmer and potentially Reece James are 2 of the only Chelsea pieces I'd be comfortable with.
Comfortable with Reece James? You're going to get injured this week, Ani. Book it.
I mean, you're not wrong there. But once again, he's got, assist equity since he's on, corners, crosses. But if you have Sterling, I think Sterling is a must sell for me. He's probably number 1 on my must sell if you have him on your team.
Again, Chelsea-Tottenham, that game Monday, 3 o'clock Eastern is the kickoff there. That's the 10th and final match of the week. Ani Sridar hanging out with us, talking some FPL. Again, his DFS column will be up Saturday morning. Get you set for that 5-game main slate. A lot of people scrambling this weekend in season-long, Ani, because they lost Pedro Neto of Wolves, who, for a while was under the radar. He just kept producing, became more and more popular. He was a sub-6 midfielder. Kind of helped the entire 15-man build. He's now injured, and this hamstring injury is going to keep him out for a while. What's the move here when you look at midfielders that are below 6? Like Cole Palmer, who we were talking about, he's one of those guys, but there are some other options that you could go with too.
Yeah, I think the number 1 option for me, and I'll probably be adding him this week to my team, that's Anthony Gordon. You get him at 5.7. He's now become he's a must start for Newcastle because of the injuries they have on their team. And he's heavily active in their attack. Newcastle don't have the best schedule going forward, but this is a team that plays really well at home. And they get an Arsenal team who just lost 3-1 to West Ham in the midweek. So I think Arsenal very beatable. Could see Anthony Gordon score or even get an assist. Then Bournemouth, Chelsea, United, Everton. That's a great line of fixtures for Anthony Gordon, and he's a must-add for me this week.
Let's stay with Newcastle. You mentioned Arsenal Newcastle. That's going to be a fun one. It's the final game on the Saturday venue, 1:30 Eastern, I think, is the kickoff there. Pedro Neto, who we talked about, injured. Everybody's selling him. Kieran Trippier of Newcastle is not injured. He's been really good this year. He's very expensive on the back line, but I saw this week people are selling him, and they're moving on. Last week was a rare blank for him. Are people making a mistake selling off Trippier? Again, they love the idea of saving money and maybe avoiding the fixtures you talked about for Newcastle. But what's your read on holding or selling with Kieran Trippier?
I think it all depends on the build, right? Because more often than not, Trippier is going to outscore a midfielder or even a striker in your lineup. I think he's a hold. I think one bad week is not something we can just be like, all right, time to sell him off. Because as I mentioned with players earlier, it's that set piece equity, Kyle. Like he's on every single free kick, the corner kicks, up and down the flanks, putting crosses in. And with this Newcastle attack, he could have an assist in every game. The part where we're a little bit worried with defenders is we love clean sheets. And with this slate of games coming up, might not get as many clean sheets as we were expecting and we got in the past month. But I think Trippier is a long-term hold.
You said earlier, Brighton Everton, 3.5 on the goal total, and you think they'll reach that, if not go beyond it. Any other wagers that you like for game week 11 that kind of stand off the page to you?
Yeah, I mean, usually I'm not a big spread bettor when it comes to soccer, but I like Man City to win by at least 3 goals against Bournemouth. It's at -102 on a lot of books. I think it's a great number. Bournemouth, arguably the worst team. I mean, Sheffield's down there for sure, but Bournemouth also, haven't seen much from them that really gives me a lot of hope. I like City to win by at least 3 here. They got to get back rolling here in the Prem. I think that Man United win last weekend was huge for their momentum after coming off 2 bad performances. So give me City to roll here at home.
Okay, folks, getting ready for another weekend. Again, it starts Saturday, 8:30 Eastern with the first game. That means locks at 7 a.m. And if you're looking to play the DFS slate, Ani's going to be available in Discord coming up on Saturday morning. A bit later on that main slate. It's usually a 10 a.m. start. It's going to be 11 a.m. This week. So enjoy the extra hour of rest, Ani, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks a lot for dropping in, okay?
You got it, Kyle.
Ani Sridar hanging out with us here on Fantasy Sports Daily as we get ready to wrap up our fourth get-together. Ray Flowers was in the chat room answering some questions. So, Ray, we let you kind of step away to help the people out. We should remind people, at least in YouTube, for the viewers there, they are able to ask questions live of both myself and Ray. Ray usually handles the answers just because he's better at the multitasking. But a lot of people jumping in there and looking for answers, right?
Yeah. Thank you for that, Kyle. I appreciate it. Yeah, there are people asking questions, and we do encourage folks to do that. YouTube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork. That's where you can find it. You get in there, watch the videos live. You can also watch them when they're taped later in the day when they go up. You can use that promo code FSD20 over at fantasyguru.com if you want to sign up for more information. We're all in Discord all day long, answering hundreds of questions, thousands of questions throughout the week. But happy to help some folks out here on the show as well.
On the way out the door, your pick tonight: Pittsburgh, Tennessee. Pittsburgh favored by 2.5. Where do you land on that?
I'll go Pittsburgh. I think it's going to be a game like we discussed with Ryan Clifford and, kind of hinted at ourselves. It's not going to be a sexy game, but I'll go with Mike Tomlin and the Steelers this evening.
If last week for Will Levis is a 9 on a scale of 1 to 10, what's tonight going to be for him?
6.5.
I'm going to go 5.
Okay.
I think it's going to be rough. I think the pressure from the Steelers is going to cause him issues.
Minka Fitzpatrick is out.
You can't count on 40, 50-yard catches.
Right. Minka Fitzpatrick being down for the Steelers is a help for Levis. But maybe I should have just said 6. Maybe I got too excited by the great ball placement from last week.
I do like the Steelers to handle the Titans in this one. And again, Kenny Pickett probably out there. Looks like everybody else is good to go too. I know DeAndre Hopkins, there were some questions earlier in the week, but he's going to be out there. Same for Derrick Henry. Again, get into Discord. Ryan Clifford's column up at fantasyguru.com. Ray's got the game day column that is ready to go as well. More columns popping up this week, or this Thursday, I should say. We got a tight end breakdown for DFS in week 9. That will be going live here in a bit. And, of course, tomorrow, Ray and I will be back at 11 a.m. Eastern. Armando Marsal stopping in with some of his thoughts for Week 9. We'll also get you a college football preview, week number 10 of the college football season. So we'll get you the latest on the DFS slate there. Ray, that'll do it for us. A pleasure as always, and we'll talk again tomorrow, okay?
Looking forward to it, Kyle. It's always fun to get a chance to talk to you and the listeners/viewers.
And now you can't get away from us. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, X, Facebook, all sorts of places. Hunt us down. Get the audio version, the video version. Let us know what you like, what you dislike, what you'd like to hear of. We are here just getting things rolling. So we're open for advice if you'd like to give it to us. We give a lot of advice, but you can give us advice as to what you'd like to see, hear, all those good things here with Fantasy Sports Daily. That is it for us. Kyle, Elfrink, Ray Flowers signing off. You have been watching Fantasy Sports Daily right here, powered by fantasyguru.com.